Hello and welcome. You're watching Big Picture and I'm Vishal Dahia. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will become the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel. The visit will mark 25 years of diplomatic relations being normalized between both the nations. There are three main components of cooperation between India and Israel which have the potential of further boosting the ties: water, agriculture and defense. India can derive great benefit from Israel's pioneering use of novel irrigation and agricultural techniques and water desalination techniques. India is world's biggest importer of defense equipments, and of late, Israel has become one of its major suppliers. Amidst all this talk of cooperation between Israel, India also needs to dehyphenate its relationship with the only Jewish nation in the world and Palestine. While the focus of Prime Minister Modi's visit is to expand the 25-year-old relationship through free trade agreement and bilateral investment, defense and homeland security ties continue to be a strong connecting link between both the nations. For more on what to expect from this visit, Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel, we have with us a distinguished panel of guests. Let me introduce you to them, starting with Mr. Bharat Karnad, research professor with CPR, the Center for Policy Research. We also have Mr. Virendra Gupta. He's a former ambassador. He was also there in the Indian embassy in Israel in 1992 when the relations were being normalized. We also have Mr. Pramit Chaudhuri. He's the foreign editor, Hindustan Times. And we're also joined by Mr. Qamar, Agha, international affairs expert. Let me begin straight away with you, Pramit. This is definitely a very, very important event because this is the first visit of Indian Prime Minister to the state of Israel. Apart from the fact that this is the first visit and apart from the fact that right now both countries are ruled by right of the center parties, what more lends importance to this particular visit?
Well, I think what is Prime Minister has been very clear in his conversations with the Israelis that he sees water as Israel's the biggest contribution that he wants in the relationship. When I've talked to Israeli officials, they're saying 50% of our conversation with your Prime Minister on this trip is about water. Israel is by far, in terms of recycling, conservation, wastewater usage, desalination, is by far the world's
It was a water deficit country, and now it's
6 years ago. It was
water to Jordan.
Yeah, 6 years ago it was. In fact, it faced a major drought situation. But for example, in a simple example, Israel recycles 86% of its wastewater. Half of its farm water comes from recycled water for its farmers, and it is the next highest country is Spain with 20%. This is 4 times better use of water technology than even the next highest nation. Simple things like leaking pipes, right? 40% of Delhi's water is lost in leaking pipes. In Israel, it's 9%. In comparison, for example, even in Western Europe, it's 20 to 30%. So Israel, Modi has fully understood this, partly when he was the chief minister of Gujarat. He'd worked with the Israelis on this. And as you know, India is...
There were a number of agreements signed between Gujarat and Israel.
And as you know, we are an extremely water-stressed nation. So he's looked at Israel and said, yes, the defense relationship is fine, and that goes back for quite some time. As you mentioned, this fiscal year, Israel will be our number one arms supplier. And we buy almost 40% of Israel's entire arms production comes to India right now. We have a cybersecurity relationship, we have a homeland security, we have a whole bunch of, but these go back many years. But water is something we've begun working with, but he wants an enormous expansion of what Israel can offer to us on water.
Okay, and let me bring in Mr. Gupta out here. You've been in the Indian embassy in Israel. As Pramit is pointing out, is it just about water diplomacy this time around, or is there more to it? Also, there are other things which are being talked about, the area of, the agriculture, the innovation in agricultural techniques. In fact, it is being said that the moment the Prime Minister gets down from the plane, he's going to be taken to a farm where he will have a look at the innovative techniques which Israelis have used in agriculture.
No, water harvesting certainly is extremely important, and Israel's pioneering role could be of tremendous interest to India. But there are other areas. Our relationship with Israel is multidimensional in terms of economic cooperation, technological cooperation. And of course, there is an important element in cooperation in defense and security fields. I must tell you that when I opened the embassy in 1992, May, and it's a very happy coincidence for me to see 25 years having been completed, one of the first visitors who was sent by Prime Minister Narasimha Rao was M.S. Swaminathan. In fact, and he was sent with a very specific mandate to look at what India could do with Israel, particularly in the agriculture and water harvesting area, apart from solar technology. I mean, these three were the chosen, identified areas. So clearly, we have a lot of interest in Israel, and Prime Minister's visit, as you rightly said, this is the first time that we've had high-level exchanges, but we've been very coy about having a Prime Minister visit Israel because of, I would say extraneous considerations. Extraneous because our foreign policy must be predicated only on our national interests. In the past, and we oftentimes, every country has ideological issues. But when ideological constraints begin to impact on our national interest, I think that is where the problem arises. So this visit, I would see it primarily a kind of very symbolic thing to unshackle India's policy from the ideological constraints and to firmly place it in the realm of national interest.
Okay, I firmly place it in the realm of national interest. That's quite a significant point where you have left. Let me bring in Mr. Bharat out here. Apart from the fact which both our guests were talking about, the need for ties in terms of solutions to water problems we have in terms of technology in agriculture, defense is one area which, if at all it is not discussed, even if it is not discussed in any visit, it remains number one, point of discussion or point of link between India and Israel. In this particular visit, do you see any significant steps being taken as far as defense ties are concerned? Because as Pramit was pointing out, that in this fiscal year, Israel will end up being number one exporter of arms and defense equipments to India.
No, I think the Prime Minister's visit is, you're not going to have any great agreement signed in the defense sphere, as far as I know. Because most of these programs that have been already agreed upon are ongoing, or India has already initialed them and money has gone to Tel Aviv and so on. And there are certain areas where we have always had, shall we say, we have off-taken Israeli technology. Most of these being in the surface-to-air missiles, for instance, short range, medium range, and long range. So we have 3 projects right now that actually are going. It's a collaboration with the DRDO, wherein the 2 countries are going to actually design and develop 3 different varieties of these missiles. Of different ranges. The other thing I think is also avionics. Most of the retrofits on the old Russian MiG aircraft, the MiG-21s, are essentially Israeli retrofits. They are the ones that have upgraded the radio sets, the countermeasures, and so on and so forth, and you fit them onto an older platform to make them much more, up to date. So these are the kinds of things that we've always relied on the Israelis for, and I think that qualitative cooperation, the quality of the cooperation, I think, is going to keep going up for a very simple reason. Israel depends on external friendly states to, in a sense, subsidize their defense R&D. That's a fact of life. For instance, the US accounts for almost 80% of the funds into Israel for military R&D. We too are now, with these missile collaborations, entering into that area where we'll be, whether you like it or not, subsidizing Israeli research. And so this is also a point of friction we have to bear in mind, because many in the DRDO will tell you, and there's a great deal of discontent about it, that the higher value technology is usually farmed out by the Israelis to themselves, leaving the low-end technology to India to develop. So like canisters, the back end of the missile and so on, rather than the front end, the fire control system, the mission control computer and so on. So these are things that have to be, shall we say, conciliated over time. And I think the Israelis understand what the problem is, and I'm sure there'll be a solution found for it.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Qamar Agha here, our international affairs expert. Mr. Agha, one very important point which is being talked about out here is the need for India to dehyphenate its relations with Israel and Palestine as of now. There have been, as our guests were pointing out, that there has been instances where, you know, that particular area was being looked in as a block, as in our relations with Israel and Palestine were talked about. But right now, most of the people say, critics and analysts say, that time has come for India to dehyphenate this. How would that benefit India, and how long or how difficult it might be for India to do that?
You see, we have dehyphenated Palestine, but we have not abandoned it. We continue to maintain close ties with the Palestinians as well. You know, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has visited India just a couple of months back, and we are supporting them. We'll continue to support. We have also, you know, number of times, you know, what has happened. We have abstained now of voting in UN Security Council, but we have also said, you know, or condemned, you know, the disproportionate use of force in Gaza Strip earlier in 2014. Sushma Swaraj has issued a statement at that time. So we are maintaining ties with both the countries. It's a very difficult balancing act.
But Qamar Sahab, the very fact that, you know, just like other international leaders who visit Israel and also, you know, go on to meet Palestinian leaders in Ramallah, it seems it's not going to happen this time around. Prime Minister Modi is not going to do that. Is that also a very significant, you know, signal which Indian establishment is trying to send?
No, but we have it's a Modi's style of diplomacy, you know, because what has happened, you know, couple of months back, you know, first he met with the Palestinian president, PLO president, you know, in Delhi, and he was hosted here for a couple of days, and then now he's going to meet here. But earlier the president, Pranab Mukherjee, when he visited both, you know, the foreign minister has also met with both. So I don't think I mean, we should not give much credence to this. We have a good relations with Arabs, with the Israelis. We have good relation with Iran for that matter also. So Arabs are not opposed to it now. Even Saudi Arabia is now dealing with the Israelis, and very soon, I mean, they might even, there are news, you know, which suggest they might even establish a relationship with the Israeli state. So there are moves, they are going on, you know. So India, they understand very well. Arab now understand. Ever since we established, in fact, if you look at it, you know, we have established relation with Israel. Our trade with the Arab countries have gone up to many-fold, you know. And since then, many Arab leaders, like the King Abdullah visited after 54 years. King of UAE visited after almost 40 years. All of them are coming to India, and they are developing trade and cultural ties further strengthened. So, I mean, it's not a problem now anymore.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Gupta here. You were there in the embassy, and that's why I want to have a first-person account from you that, you know, though the efforts are being made, as Qamar Agha was pointing out, that, you know, the PLO, the Palestinian president was being hosted here, and then the Prime Minister is going. When President Pranab Mukherjee went there, he also you know, went over to meet the Palestinian leaders. But is this visit being seen as a tilt towards Israel, and is that going to be a little difficult for the Indian, you know, foreign affairs establishment to balance down the line?
No, I think we must move away from this compulsion of having to balance.
Okay.
All along, in fact, for the last 30, 40 years, our posture has been defensive. We have reacted to events. And I think the time has come that we show the requisite confidence in dealing with other countries, you know, other words, conduct of our foreign policy. So we...
Based on our own needs,
based on
their needs.
And based on our national interest. As Agha Sahab pointed out, we have a principled support for Palestinian cause. Palestinians also enjoy a great degree of personal rapport with people in India. But that should not come in the way of seeking to improve our bilateral ties with Israel. And mind you, when we have improvement of relationship, it is not that we support Israel carte blanche. We have remained firmly opposed, principally opposed to their settlement activity. We have remained opposed to their oppressive activities against Palestinians. So I think that distinction has to be made. That, Prime Minister Modi particularly has taken initiative. He's visited Saudi Arabia, he's visited so many countries in the Gulf, he visited Iran. So I think this visit to Israel, I would say, is nothing extraordinary. It is, he's trying to cover the canvas. And the effort, underlying effort on India's part is to optimize our relationship with a whole spectrum of countries.
Okay. Pramit, do you agree with this point that, we should, time has come, we should move away from this compulsion of balancing the ties with, two different countries, and we should rather focus on our interests, our national interests?
Well, I think we've always been focused on our national interests. Look at the relationship, but the point is that the relationship with Israel has now reached a scale that is really incredible. I mean, Israel, besides what we've talked about on the defense side, Israel in the Kargil war actually intervened on our behalf. They supplied us with the laser-guided missiles that our aircraft are missing.
And that was a crucial support.
That was crucial, absolutely crucial for us in the Kargil war. It is the only country in the world that we have a nuclear military understanding. It's the only country we have given access to the sanctum sanctorum of our defense system, which is our nuclear weapons arsenal. And we have a technological trade-off with that country on that front. So if you've already built up such a relationship with this country, for you then to say, let's do all of these things, but publicly we still will not admit that we have a relationship with you on this scale. As the Israelis used to complain, they said, you treat us as a mistress. In other words, you come and make love to us and then you hide us in a back room somewhere. So given this, you need to, all that Modi has basically said is that we need to publicly accept that this is the relationship. And everything we have seen so far, it has not cost us anything with any other country. In fact, I remember when we declared Israel to be something we began to develop a strategic relationship with Israel. When I once visited Saudi Arabia and I interviewed King Abdullah, he actually said, we're actually taking you more seriously now that you have a special relationship with Israel. Before we didn't take you seriously, but now that you do, we understand that we have to now move our relationship. So if anything, our credibility with a lot of the Arab countries actually increased. The other thing I should add, that we now have one problem with the Palestinians, which is that Palestinian nationalist movement is split into half. One is the secular, original, based on the PLO and Al-Fatah, and the other, of course, is the one built around the Muslim Brotherhood, which is Hamas. India remains uncomfortable with the Muslim Brotherhood. So we remain, you will not see an Indian Prime Minister, I suspect, ever go to Gaza in any time soon. Very focused on the Palestinian Authority, which is now in a quasi-alliance with the Israeli government. So again, within the Palestinian cause, we now have a situation where the Palestinians are now, at least the Palestinians we are comfortable with, are not all that uncomfortable with our idea of a relationship with Israel.
So that further, makes things easier for us in terms of foreign policy. Let me bring in Mr. Bharat here again on the national security aspect again. And this time around, I want to bring in the issue of cooperation on combating terrorism. Now, there has been a joint working group which has been working between India and Israel. But then, and let's also not forget that Israel is also one of those countries which has supported India's cause vis-a-vis the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Where and how can India benefit more in terms of this entire issue of combating terrorism, and in which way can India use Israel's help?
Well, look, Israeli technology is foremost in border management, whether it's on the Golan Heights or in the Gaza, on West Bank and so on. They use an awful lot of technology for surveillance, tracking, and for other uses, intelligence and so on. So the thing I think is we have always had a great deal of rapport, and I think a relationship wherein they have given us their technical solutions for stopping, in fact, the infiltration of the jihadi element or the Hezbollah element from across the LOC. But some of the things that we have set up, unfortunately, haven't worked. because they get snowed under and they get buried, and you know we have a real problem, and these are costly equipments, and we have lost a whole bunch of things like that. So we are not able to quite stabilize the kind of technology platforms that the Israelis have, because they don't face the kind of terrain and climatic problems we do in our geography in Kashmir.
Vis-a-vis the technologies which have been used by both.
But more than that, I think just by way of history, Israel flew sorties in the nights basically into Mumbai to bring in ammunition and small arms and stuff in the '65 war. And, you know, at that time, it was all done subsurface because we were ostensibly not on good terms publicly with Israel. And that's the sort of relationship we've always had from the very beginning. Because the founding Prime Minister of Israel and Jawaharlal Nehru were very close friends. They're all socialist buddies. Ben-Gurion and Jawaharlal Nehru shared an awful lot of ideology. Israel was a socialist state before India had the apparatus of the socialist state. Unfortunately, they progressed beyond the socialist state and we got mired in it. That's the difference. But they started out virtually with the same kind of histories. At birth, the British mandate, Palestine territory, the British running away, cutting and running.
So the shared history and shared interest can help India as far as...
And the partition too, both of us.
And the partition, yes.
And
the mandate territory, that's partition.
Well, yes, definitely. That's
and a very bloody partition at that.
Let me, we're running short of time, so let me bring in Qamar Agha once again out here. Mr. Agha, how do you see the future of Indo-Israel ties? We've spoken about the need for India to have a relationship with Israel in terms of getting more help in the field of water technology, the agriculture technology, defense. Israel is already, you know, the #1 exporter. But apart from all these, or rather including all these, where do you see ties from here onwards, specifically when the first time India's Prime Minister is going to be there in Tel Aviv?
You see, there is a lot of scope developing ties between the two countries. We have counter-terrorism agreement with them, you know, sharing of information regarding various militant groups. They have a lot of information about the militant groups operating in the Middle Eastern region. We have very good information on groups, you know, which are operating in AFPAC region. So this is one of the, then apart from the, defense production is another very important field, you know. Make in India, you know, there are a number of projects, you know, which will likely to come up in the next few years. You know, we have a whole long list of items, you know, which can be manufactured in India with the help of Israel or jointly, you know, production. We have large number of scientists in this country, you know, and they have technologies, number of technologies which can be further developed. So scope is, there's a tremendous scope apart from agriculture or water salination, as Pramit has mentioned, you know. And we also, you know, the Arabs would be very happy, you know, for developing ties between the two nations, because Palestinians want India to play a greater role in Arab-Israeli conflict, because that is a very important to them, and they believe the Palestinian leadership, which believes that India can play a better role,
bigger role
because they have relationship with both the Arabs as well as Israel.
Okay. Pramit, quickly, how do you look at scenario changing from here onwards? Is it going to be a significant change, or is it building upon what has been there in the past?
I think most of it will be building on what we have already accomplished. I mean, we already have so many things going on with the Israelis. I think when I've asked the Israelis and the Indian officials recently, I said, what is missing? And they said the people-to-people component remains weak.
That has to be
that has to be increased. The number of, there's about 40,000 bilateral people going back and forth. The business relationship, the commercial, still limited, about $5 billion in trade if you exclude the defense side. That needs to be expanded more, and I think we're going to see a lot of moves to try and do that after this trip.
After this trip. Mr. Gupta, in terms of diplomatic ties, do you see this visit a very important event as far as you know, diplomacy is concerned, the foreign affairs is concerned?
Well,
from here onwards, things will change.
Maturity, I would say, and which we're seeing in other fields as well. Greater exhibition of confidence on our part that we are able to chart out our relationship with Israel without being unnecessarily coy about it, and at the same time not abandon our principled commitment to Palestine. And I think that's a very, very strong message that we are giving, which will be relevant in other areas as well.
Okay. Okay. Quickly, Mr. Bharat, your views from the national security point of view?
No, I think we are entering the consolidation phase, really. It's a very strong base that we have to build on.
Okay.
And this is going to get stronger in the future.
Okay. So that is the views of our distinguished panelists. It seems clearly that Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel, which is going to be the first visit of any Indian Prime Minister to that country, will have different connotations, but it is going to be really important on building on the historic relationship both countries have had, and as one of our panelists pointed out, bringing in more maturity in this relationship. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different set of guests and a different topic. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.